some faces back. And I also see that we have a bunch of new people joining us today. So welcome. We are Kensan, and this is Cloud. We are a monthly meetup. We have any kind of topics ranging from front end to back end and DevOps. So if you haven't joined the meetup group, join us. It's meetup.com/cloud. Also, we are part of the PvD Geeks Club, which is a community-oriented group in Rhode Island for all tech enthusiasts. The website is pvdgeeks.org.
Yeah, I think so. That's
yeah,
what it is.
So pvdgeeks.org. Please, if you haven't joined, join. That's a great platform, and we try to get the community together. For today, we are offering the topic of SSO authentication and authorization. So that's Darren running the topic today. Let's kick it off.
All right, so name of the topic, my clever name topic of, so you think you know authentication, but spelled SSO for single sign-on. I was sick last week, and I couldn't do the presentation. I feel like I was afraid I wouldn't be able to talk to everyone tonight. So I'm better now a little bit, just little sniffles, but I did kind of throw these slides together like today. So there might be some grammar mistakes and spelling errors. We'll get through it, hopefully. So I'm Darren Bathgate, and this is the CloudRI meetup. What we're going to talk about tonight, I'll give you a little intro to what SSO is. Very brief intro, because these slides are pretty shallow, but hopefully I'll add some color to it. I'm going to cover a few authentication protocols. I'm going to talk about SAML. Yeah, we'll talk about it. But really, I'm more interested in talking about OAuth 2 and an extension of OAuth 2 called OpenID Connect. We're also, while we're on the topic of OpenID Connect, we're going to talk about JSON Web Tokens, JWT. We're going to cover some cloud-based providers, and then we're going to do a little demo that half of which Carlos wrote, and I haven't looked at his code yet, so hopefully it's all right. We can all review it live. It'd be great. So why is identity management important? Anyone's built an application before, an application that requires users to sign in. That's the first thing a user's probably going to do. Well, first they have to sign up, but then they log in. So this becomes the gateway into the service. If login doesn't work, you can't get into the service. And this is a problem that we've commonly seen at Kenzan. Who's here has built a login system? Pretty much everyone, for the most part. If you worked on any sort of code, you probably have at least not seen it, been maybe affected by it, who knows. I was trying to log into my Verizon to get my bill the other day, and couldn't log in. And eventually it fixed itself, but I was like, oh, login's down. That's just a typical thing that happens. And importantly, when users are authenticated, and we can say who they are, we can say what they have access to, and we can say what they don't have access to, because we don't want to give them access to things that they shouldn't be able to see. And then there's some challenges to authentication. Identity management in particular is, one thing is you gotta make sure you protect people's information. There is a lot of compliance out there. One of which probably some people are familiar with GDPR, not sharing, not storing personal information if it doesn't want to. The other things that could be concerned about is to deal with HIPAA compliance or PCI compliance. It's a lot of stuff that really, makes you lose sleep at night. And I don't know how many times we have built various sign-up, forgot password flows, even multi-factor auth. We do this all the time. It's just a common pattern. We're always re-implementing it. And the other thing we have to do is we have to monitor login. Well, sometimes we do. It's good practice too, but oops. These new Macs are really sensitive. I got this new Mac this week, and it's like a giant touchpad. I just keep hitting the corners and then just going off. Should have just got a Windows computer, but here we are. So the other thing is bots. Bots make our login, they attack our login, try to brute force it to get it, so we have to implement things like password attempts and captchas and all this other stuff, and you have to pick 20 different images that look like a cat. And then there's also the vulnerabilities, keeping up to date with those. So that is where, you know, the concept of SSO and really, you know, summarizing, like, you know, actually using something to build SSO for you is what I'm working towards. So what? So single sign-on, that's what it stands for. And I made this little lovely graphic. I just kind of threw some things together that reminded me of identity providers, service providers. So these are the two actors in an SSO system. You have the identity provider, that is where your users are, and then your services, and just threw a bunch of graphics on that look like things that you might offer as a service. Is that like a credit card, I guess, in there? I don't know. It was on Lucidchart. I just kind of grabbed a bunch of stuff. So really, you know, the thing that is most important in SSO when we're talking about this is the identity provider. This is a database, basically. Well, it's more than a database, but it's a database of IDs. It's a management platform around those to be able to create, maintain, and manage those identities. And then it is also responsible for identifying user, receiving user login requests, and saying who they are. So the such actions that we might see in that are register, login, forgot password. Also, you know, as multi-factor authentication is more popular. Like I have like 20 different Google Authenticator things on my phone now. That is something that we have to now implement as well. A service provider is whatever you want it to be, really. It's what we're building. It's what most of us are probably in the business of doing, is making something that the user will use. Feature, you know, maybe it's e-commerce, paying for something. Maybe it's articles, content, entertainment, things like that. But in an SSO role, it has to be responsible for trusting and understanding the authentication response that's coming from that IDP and saying, oh, I know what you're talking about, I know who you are. That's why we have these authentication protocol standards to work seamlessly between the two. And then it makes the decision whether or not to trust that IDP, and then once it trusts it, it provides that service to that customer, or denies it. So we're going to talk about SAML, and I know what you're thinking. Isn't that actor that played on Pulp Fiction? It's not. Kevin approved that joke. What it actually stands for is Security Assertion Markup Language. Just a little bit on that. I've reused this joke way too many times. I actually at one point had a team named Samuel Jackson, and the client I worked for at the time, I think it was someone like really high up, like the CTO at like a big presentation, was like, that is the best team name I've ever heard. Anyway, going back to SAML. So SAML works by establishing trust between the identity provider and the service provider, either by IDP or SDP. And it does so through signing certificates. So it signs requests and responses between the two, but there's also this, this metadata exchange, so they know who each other's signing certificates are, so that when they receive a request from that, they can verify that that signature was signed by the opposing party. And it is XML. It's all XML based. So typical in a SAML step, and this is kind of similar for OAuth as well, is what you would have. You have this exchange between the IDP and SDP. I can go into details about SDP initiated sign-on versus IDP initiated sign-on. It basically means where the user started from. But regardless, there is going to be an exchange of information prior to a trusted connection between the two. So IDP says, here's my metadata and my signed information to the SDP. SDP does the same. Now they have each other's information, and when they communicate with each other, they know that communication is trusted communication. When a service provider gets an unauthorized request, it will send what's called an auth-end request to the IDP. IDP will then identify that user usually by way of login, username, password, and then the IDP sends that response to, sends what we call a SAML response, so another XML payload, to the STP with that user info, and within that XML there will be a signature that will, for one, we'll say that's signed by the IDP, and then it also represents the payload of that XML so that if anything was altered in that, the signature would not line up. So I did these little sequence diagrams. They look a little retro. It's a little tool called Plant UML. You do this all in like kind of like ASCII text, and then it just generates an image for you. Like I said, I did all this stuff today, so it was the quickest way to get some sequence diagrams out the door. So I don't know how great that text is. I could not make that any bigger. I think we'll walk through it. So on the very left here, we have our user. I identified that by that little stick figure. We have an IDP, an STP, and an STP, and then I kind of just added in this additional SDV store. Just the concept of storing IDP metadata. It's likely you're the one implementing that STP, that service provider. So there is this initial metadata exchange. This usually happens prior to any sort of user traffic. This is like we go and we configure this, we establish a connection, and then we have each other's metadata information. In this particular flow, I'm going to refer to this as a service provider initiated sign-on. This is when the user first goes as an anonymous user to the service provider, and then the service provider redirects the IDP. The opposite is when the user starts at the IDP and ends at the service provider. So the user says, hey, I want to get this page from the service. And the service says, I don't know who you are. I'm gonna have to get you authorized. So it's going to issue a redirect here. So a little bit of back and forth here. Within that redirect, we're going to have a SAML auth request. Actually, I'm gonna just tab out right here real quick and show you what that looks like. If you ever done anything with SAML, you've probably been to this website before. It's called samltool.com. It's got a lot of cool things because it's to build out these requests. So I could actually come through here, fill all this information, and generate a auth request or what it would look like. But I'm not going to do that because that's it's a lot of fields and stuff. So I'm just going to show you what one looks like. I'm going to make that a little bit bigger here. So a lot of them are very basic, and most of the time, it's all you really need to do is understand that the issuer coming from that is who you'd expect to be. The issuer is the service provider. So you see SP. It's saying, I'm this user. I'm sending you this request as a service provider to the identity provider. And there's more detailed versions of it. So this one has actually has a signature. So it's represented by this massive hash here. Goes all the way over here. That is the signature. That's the certificate that was used to sign that. So that the IDP can verify that that came from the trusted service provider. We'll go back over here to our sequence diagram. So that is, get that auth request. It sends it back to the IDP. IDP will then usually present the user with a login page. If the IDP doesn't already know who that user is, you could have already been authenticated there and you won't see login at all. But most cases, if I did this incognito, I would see a login page. And I enter my credentials in. If those credentials are correct, the IDP would now redirect me with a SAML response. So I'll show you what that looks like. This is the SAML response. This is a signed one here. So there's always going to be a signature. Well, it doesn't have to be a signature, but usually, if you're going to do this the right way, you're going to do it with a signature. And it's going to have that signature. It's also going to have user information. This is telling, so at this point, we're past the point of needing credentials. The credentials are already identified by the identity provider. So now what the identity provider is telling the service provider is, this is who this user is. This is their information. And then now that service provider can use that information to create a profile for that user and give them access to the site. Go back into that slide, so we'll show that final thing there, that usually there's some validation of that SAML response to make sure that it looks good. Interesting fact about SAML is it's done in the form of self-submitting forms, which is it's a funny concept. So the IDP will actually return an HTML page back to the user with fields in that HTML form that are filled out, and a little JavaScript line that just automatically submits that form so that it submits a post request now to the service provider. So it's just a funny little workaround to get, because the payload actually becomes very large, so you have to submit it as a post request rather than putting it into the URL. Everything's good. We typically would persist that user session. Another important note to make here in SAML is that if you're a service provider, you are responsible for maintaining the session with that user. Once that user has been identified, you establish the rules of how long that user can stay identified for and when they need to re-authenticate. That's about all I'm going to get into SAML here. I already showed you this. This is just like a sample, XML. It's a little boring. I'll talk about OAuth 2. And I put a link here to this RFC. And this RFC, so I can open it. There we go. It's told me more about OAuth than most things on the internet have. I find it very useful. I'm just gonna kind of skim through this here, just to know what the different parameters are that are required and optional in various requests. We'll go over that a little bit more in detail, but worth a read if you're ever curious. Just Google OAuth 2 RFC, and you'll be the first Google hit, and pretty useful stuff in there. And I think there's even in some cases some ASCII sequence diagrams in here. Let's see if I can find one. Like that. Just really paints the picture for me. We'll go back to the slides. So OAuth 2. Similar to SAML, there is an exchange between IDP and SP. There is no initial metadata exchange like there is with SAML. There's no signing certificates and like that. It's done with whitelisting, saying where this request can come from, what URL can this come from, where can it go back to, and also client secrets. So those are like passwords, basically. And there are two implementations, and these are both actually will be covered in a demo. The implicit grant that was written by Carlos, and I wrote one for Spring Boot for using an authentication grant. We're going to go over those in the demo, and we're going to go over why you would use one versus the other. But I wrote some more, sequence diagrams here because I was really I'm starting to get the hang of this plant UML. I'll actually show you what these look like. It's kind of cool. So let's see if I can find it here. So this is what it looks like. It's maybe we could change the color here. I always say whenever you're presenting, you should probably go with a lighter theme because it's easier to see on a projector. So that's what it looks like. It's just typically ASCII. There's these little arrows here, and then you run this jar, and it just generates an image for you. It's kind of cool. I don't know. But again, my only criticism of it is it looks a little retro. Well, I guess what do you want for a free tool? So in OAuth, we have kind of a similar back and forth between IDP and STP. We're again talking about STP initiated sign-on here. Usually goes to STP, press the resource. STP redirects back to the IDP. And typically in OAuth, a lot of this stuff is standardized. Like the URLs, patterns that we use, the query string parameters, these are all standard form. You can read about them in the RFC, and you'll see them kind of in action when I go through the demo. But typically, the URL chosen for the IDP to receive that authorization request is /authorize. So the user will be redirected back to that and make a request to the IDP, the authorized endpoint, The IDP will then present a login page. So very similar to SAML. So at that login page, hopefully you didn't enter your password in wrong, and I didn't add a flow for that. Sorry, it would be too big. I need to fit it on the slide. There would be an auth code exchange. So in the auth code is kind of like a holding place. It's like a temporary session that the IDP gives the user directly. Gives it directly to the user, and the user returns that to the SDP as a temporary holding thing, so that the SDP can now exchange that information for an actual authentication token from the IDP. So there's like a little back channel conversation. This is where the trust comes in here. This is how the trust happens between the IDP and the SDP. The SDP will make a request to a token service /token, usually the standard for that. Make a request to that, providing that auth code that was given to the user, and also that service provider's client secret. So that service provider is signed a client secret, never shared with the user. You never want to share that secret. That's why it's secret. It provides that if the secret in the auth code checkout, it'll give the FCP a token, and that token now can be given to that user to be used to authenticate requests. And then we set our computer user on a happy path. We might want to persist those tokens in the store. Again, maintaining our own session. That's typically how we do it. Implementation, I'm just going to be using JSession. I don't recommend it, but that's, it's good for a demo. And we're going to give that user the protected resource that they requested. The OAuth 2 implicit grant is a little bit simpler than that. There's no auth code. The authorization token is returned directly to the user rather than the service provider getting it from the IDP using that secure, that client secret. Now this is going to be less secure, as you might be able to tell. There's no trust between the IDP and SDP. So there are specific use cases for this. Particularly, the use case for this is for single-page web apps where there's no backend. We're going to cover OpenID Connect. I kind of made it sound like it was its own protocol, but it's really not. OpenID Connect is OAuth plus an ID token. What is an ID token? So an ID token is a JSON web token that is returned in the token exchange. So it's just like an additional field you get back when you talk to the IDP. And that's what makes it OpenID Connect versus OAuth 2. That JWT will contain that profile information, kind of like what you saw in SAML. Now, OAuth 2 does not have a standard for providing user profile information. OAuth 2, OpenID Connect, is an extension that now gives the profile information, who that user is, to the service provider. And that's about it. So now we're going to move right along to what a JWT is. Some people pronounce it JOT. I don't like JOT. What if I just did an entire presentation where I pronounced every acronym, even if it wasn't impossible to pronounce? It would be an interesting thing. But there's some acronyms that people pronounce and some that don't. This one is pronounced JOT. So that's that. What a JWT is this encoded string separated. It's actually 3 parts. And the 3 parts are separated by a period. There's a header, there's a body, a signature. Header is just typically what this JWT is, what algorithm was assigned with, or what type it is. The body is the actual payload. That's the user profile information. Again, this is JSON string. These are JSON, so it's the JavaScript object notation, but it's encoded. So it's like the base 64 encoder or something like that. And so that body is going to be like a JSON object, a key value. Signature will, similar to our SAML, is going to be the tamper-proof signing of that token to say that it was signed by the IDP. So now I have a certificate from the IDP that IDP gave me. I can now verify that JWT was signed by that IDP. So it adds an additional level of trust to the otherwise the non-signing way of doing OAuth 2. And if anyone ever worked with JWT, you've probably been to a website called jwt.io. It's a pretty good website because this is what a JWT looks like on the left here, all this gargly gook. Sometimes you'll see it in a cookie or session, header, things, something like that. You copy and paste it, slap it in here, and it'll actually tell you what each part is. So you see the red, first part separated by that first period right there is the header. So it's a type of JWT used. I clicked. So that was an algorithm that was signed by RS-256 and KID, which I don't know what that is. There's a lot of things I don't know. Some things I do know though, so don't freak out. And then we'll also get some additional metadata about its payload. Typically, we'll get an issuer, represented by ISS, or in the subject. That's the information of who actually authorized or signed this. The audience is who it's intended for, so that's the service provider. And we have expiration values as well. This is how long the token should be trusted for. Usually it's about an hour. And then we can also pass in different signing information to then verify that that signature is correct so that nothing was tampered here. Because if I change something in that payload, a signature will no longer line up. And now it cannot no longer be trusted. So always want to validate that your signatures are valid. Because you can still read it, but if the signature doesn't line up, then toss it. So I've been required by the boards of this meetup to always lay things to the cloud, because it's in the name, right? Clouds. Oh, no, but seriously though, there are lots of cloud providers out there that will implement SSO for you. And these are all just the ones that we've used at Kenza. I'm sure there's a lot more. I just couldn't recall any more than this. We have a project that's actually going on that Carlos is actually working on, is using AWS Cognito. I've worked with both Auth0 and Okta and Azure AD, which is Microsoft's version. We're going to be doing a demo. I think we're going to take a break here first, but we're going to be doing a demo, and I'm going to use Auth0 because it's my favorite. I'm pushing my opinions onto you. So this is what the demo is going to be, and I think are we doing on time here? We're about 30 minutes in, so because we should take a break at this point. Or?
Yeah, I think. Any questions before we go on break?
What up?
So I have a question on JWTs. When they expire, how typically renew it?
So in the OAuth 2 flow, you would renew it through a refresh token. So when you actually request the token, you get like a number of tokens back from that token exchange. You'll get an access token, you'll get an ID token if it's OpenID Connect, and you get a refresh token. Now, a refresh token is usually a long-lived token, like you can live for like a week, a year, who knows. That can then use to then request new tokens over and over again on behalf of the user. So it's just kind of a way to, if the IDP decided this user is no longer good, it's a way to make sure the service provider keeps checking that. But there is, if it's not OID, if you're just using JWT, you can use JWTs anywhere you want, really. If it's non that, you have to implement your own practice for doing it. Yep.
What are the differences between Okta and Auth0 in terms of identity providers?
I've done probably about the same amount of work on both, and that is like POC level work. So not really too extensive. I like Auth0 better. I think it's more developer friendly. I think they're going to give you a lot of helpful tools to get started in your application, a lot of better documentation. They have this like Lambda style function that you can add to like customize and change how your authentication works.
I think down on the demo, we're going to go into the dashboard for Auth0, right?
That's correct, yes.
So once we go there, you're going to see that their actual dashboard is like so complete. It has like metrics and so forth.
plugins and everything, so it's pretty cool.
Any more questions before we go on break?
I got one. So, excluding OpenID, how often do you guys find yourself combining different forms of authentication? Because OpenID is inherently combined, right?
We've implemented 20,000 different custom authentication systems, and some of which have used both OpenID, SAML, and something else in like combine them together in some sort of fuzzing algorithm that says, okay, it's this type of request, we got to deal with it this way. It's too many. Can't do that.
Just one interesting point about Auth0 is that for multi-factor authentication, at least not now, they don't support using email for that. Most people prefer an SMS message or maybe an app overlap. But my company had a client who didn't want their clients to have their mobile phones handy in order to get that second factor. They wanted an email message, even though it's ancient and not Auth0 doesn't have that.
No, it's interesting. Like I said, I haven't seen the full production implementation of really any of these at scale, except for Azure AD, but not with multi-factor auth. So I guess I haven't really got too into detail about that to figure out those limitations.
Cool. So 10-minute break, and then we're back at 7:15.
demo is that I can make any time. Well, I'll show you that. I'll start with making an application. This is the service provider probably that I'm intending to make here. It gives you a lot of help here about what you're intending to do. Are you doing a mobile app? Are you doing a single page web app? Are you doing a web application with a backend, or a machine-to-machine application? So we have the two cases: it's single page web app, and we have the React web app. We don't really do mobile or desktop development here, so I didn't show that. And so I figured, kind of the core Kenzan, we focus on either like the front end, back end type of work. So I made some stuff here. I tried to do a sample demo. It just failed horribly, and I was running out of time. So we just kind of axed that for now. But I'm going to show you, this is the app. And I'm going to show you really why I picked Auth0 for this demo is because they did the work for me. Or you can just kind of come through here, pick what language you want, and they give you a little demo to work with. I did take what I wanted out of the code sample, but it was largely copy and paste. I don't know what Carlos did, but that's what I did. So because I picked for this one, it was an web application, it's assuming that it's some sort of backend language. And then, so you can see all the popular ones are there. You got the .NET, you got the Go, you got the Java, Spring Boot, Spring MVC, Node.js, even PHP. Imagine if I tried to pronounce that acronym. I didn't know how to do it, so it could be a noise.
Try again.
Nope. And if I were to do a single page web app, or the recommendations for a quick start would be either Angular, straight up JavaScript, or React, and we just went React. There's also other, like, you could connect this so much, so much possibilities with this. You can connect it to all these different, Active Directory, Dropbox, some other things, SharePoint, Slack. We have these connections that I can connect to a database. So it gives you an internal user database to work with. You can connect it to your own database, your own user database, and manage your users like on-premise, something like that. This is a cloud service, so if that's a concern for your company's needs, if you have to be on-premise, this is not a solution for you. What else we got here? Kind of skim through this. I'm gonna go. So I'll show you here. These are our user database. These are our users that exist here. We have good old Samuel Jackson's in there. That's the user I'll be testing with tonight. Carlos made some emails here. I mentioned this earlier before, but very important. We have auditability with this. So we have user login attempts. This is something that is very important for the monitoring and understanding of the traffic, the login traffic that's coming through, so that you can secure it better. We also have multi-factor authentication that we can implement to do SMS. Someone I mentioned that we couldn't do email, but we can do SMS, I guess, and some other things maybe. I haven't messed around with this too much. We're gonna go into the code, pull some terminals out. I forget which one. This one's Carlos. We're gonna start with Carlos's thing here. So it's a Node app. So I think I just do like I'm gonna first pull this up in. Anyone else use Visual Studio Code? Yeah, it's pretty popular these days. I'm using it for a lot of things. It's I've been writing Java in it, and it's been a challenge, but I'm starting to get used to it. It's just not as helpful as the Java IDEs. But this is a Node app. So, is there anything in particular worth highlighting here, Carlos?
Not really. I mean, it's just basic React app. I wanted to highlight how the sessions are persistent between like routes. Single page app. So there is a. Can you go into components and then probably bootstrap and then down. So yeah, there's three basic routes. Just the main route, which is just not authenticated, and then home route that is where is the route that you get redirected from the actual service. Because when you get the actual token, you have to specify in the dashboard where to be redirected to. In this point, you won't really see it because it's on a loader, and the transaction happens so fast that it just redirects to home again. Pretty good.
Cool. So I'm gonna start this up and see if I can. The npm, right? You'll use npm start. Npm start. Is that what did he do it? Let's see. Oop, something's happening. Oh, look at there. We got a site. I'm gonna switch this over to. Whenever you're doing SSO stuff, it's always better to test in incognito mode because cookies and things like that. Well, we don't know what cookies I already have. I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna pull up developer tools here just to see if we can capture what's going on here. Make sure that we're preserving the log. Think this is gonna work, Carlos? Fingers crossed on this one.
Find out.
Ooh, look at that. So what just happened there is that sign on. I was on the app, the service provider. I needed to authenticate. So we saw that a authorized request is issued there. I don't know how well you can see that. That's a /authorized endpoint that I mentioned before. So this is an OAuth implicit grant flow. We have the client ID, which is again OAuth standard, and a response type of token. That's what you would expect for a response type of implicit grant. You are requesting. This is what I'm saying. I want to request a token directly. I want that implicitly provided to me. So I'll see if I can remember my user here, Samuel Jackson.
So you can actually log in, but also you can sign up and feed that database in the Auth0.
Ruined. Text is so small in these things. I don't know.
Password 1.
My password 123.
Okay.
I don't know. There's an exclamation point at the end. And you might see this. So this is the first I'm actually accessing this app. So I am authorizing my single-page web app, basically saying that this service provider can now access my information in my profile. I'm going to give that the green light there, and that should redirect you back in. Now I am logged in. So let's see if we can see actually what happened there. One of the things that we would expect in implicit grant, there's probably a lot of back and forth with us here, but at a certain point we should see a callback back to our local host. Let me see if I can find that here. And it looks like it was right there. Let's see what actually came back in that request here. Did we get anything good? You need JavaScript to run this app. What do you mean? Sometimes I've never actually done the single page app implementation for this. So I don't know where the ID token. Sometimes it comes back in the URL. I was looking for that, but I didn't see it. So we're gonna assume it's there because I'm logged in now. So I should be able to see my profile. Say, well, Jackson. Where is it actually stored? Is it stored as a cookie? Or
So
is
it comes back and it's stored in local storage.
Local storage. So it's going to be. I don't see it. Where is it, Carlos? Session storage?
It should be. You broke it.
I broke it.
Yeah, if you go back to the code, it'll actually tell you where it is.
I look at your code now.
So going to services. What service?
Is it transmitted as a bearer token? Awesome.
So there you go. Set. That should be in the session.
They could just blame it on my new computer. Probably messed up somehow. Let's try it. Let me just. I don't want to dwell on it too much. I kind of just wanted to crack open that ID token and show you what it looked like, but we can. Maybe it something hiccuped on the cognito. Well, in this one, I can actually see what the cookies are. Let's see if there's a cookie. There's no cookie. I don't know why I have a JSON ID for a Node app. It must have been from an old thing.
Going to view profile?
What?
Going to view profile?
View profile.
Should be over
No, that's what Jay says. Like I said, I have no idea where that came from. That's from a Java app.
Can't remember. But I mean, at this point you're logged in and it's getting the key.
It's working. Okay.
Don't touch it. It's working.
Don't touch it, it's working. We'll just leave it at that. So that is, so in this case, this is what we're assuming here is you have a single page web app, so there's no backend. So there's no actual secure way to store a client's secret to make that trusted exchange. So we have to make that request directly from the browser. And that's what's happening here. You might be able to see that request going off. So you can see here, there's a user info call, and that responded back with OK, apparently. Must have been OK. Oh, here we go. So there is the profile information that came back. You can actually get like a profile image there and an avatar. You should make a new avatar and be upload that picture of Samuel Jackson, Pulp Fiction. Now we'll do it after. Maybe there's time after.
Also, the users, you can actually post against the Auth0 database. I think there's a metadata key that you can use, but it's limited by, I think it's like 56 megs or something. So you can store some information there, but it's not recommended.
Yeah. So I am going to cover the next demo, which is going to be the backend implementation. So this is where, in case you have a backend, you're going to do a client ID exchange. Now I'm gonna tell you that I cheated a lot on this. I barely wrote any code for this, but it works. It's mostly mostly took from the demo. So let's pull this up in VS Code. It's a Spring Boot app because I'm a Java guy and like Spring Boot. And I copied paste some code. Let's see what we got here. So I'm gonna show you what's in the POM here. We have the security starter. From your Spring Boot, you probably know that there's that security starter. It's a web application. There actually is a Java dependency here for Auth0. I'm sure there's one for React as well, right? That's what probably we use.
Yeah, so we have to do Auth0.js.
Yep. So that's the Java version for that. So that gives us, it kind of does a lot of magic for us right there. Now, if I look at my configuration for my backend service, which is, I believe, what I called it. No, I just called it my OAuth2 service. We have a client ID and a secret. A secret is starred out there. Secret is what we would use in the case of the auth code grant. That's what we give to our backend to make that secure exchange of information so that the IDP knows that it came from a trusted source. The other thing that I have to note as well here is that I have to whitelist a URL callback. So that is, this is running on my computer. I have to do localhost 8080 / callback. If I did not put that in there, this would fail because it would not trust the callback that I given to it. We'll see this in the URL when the application kicks off. Now I'll actually have to go show the code here as well. So again, this is not my code. A lot of it's kind of, because my code's usually better looking than this. But I just copy paste some of this. And like all this business is it just looks like a mess. And it's not my style. Sorry. So I issue in the login request, all it does is it kicks off a redirect to the login endpoint, the authorized endpoint that is from Auth0, and that's going to put in the client ID. So actually, I'm going to go back to let me go into the configuration first here. Where is that? This Spring Boot. You come off with Spring Boot, and there's a lot of magic that happens. So I can't really explain it, but it's doing stuff. So the configuration, this is a typical, without any sort of OAuth influence here, this is what your typical security configuration for Spring would look like. It's this build your start pattern where you apply access rules to endpoints. So in this case, our callback and our login are going to be assumed that they're going to be coming in from anonymous users. So we're always going to permit all, and then as a default, anything else is going to require authentication. This part right here, this authentication controller, if I look at the package, this is from the Auth0. Everything else here is from Spring Boot. So that's core Spring implementation. This is the that does the additional magic behind the scenes to do the Auth0 implementation of it. So all I need for that is the domain that was given to me by Auth0, the client ID, and the client secret. I put to that conveniently in my application.yaml, and don't worry, I didn't commit this to GitHub yet. But that's my client secret. Try not to write that down. I don't see phones out there. Okay. I'll probably just delete everything after this anyway, so. So I construct that. Where was I? I lose that place sometimes. So correct that, created a bean, which means I pass it into the magicness pool of Spring stuff. So then I can then magically pull it out later. And where I pull it out is in the controller here. So now it has all that information about the Auth0 context, the URL that redirects to the client ID, the secret. So I use that to then build a method called build authorized URL. It's going to create the redirector URL. I'm going to redirect to that. That's when the user requests login. On a callback, when they return back with the auth code, I'm then going to, for the purposes of the demo, log all this information. Again, don't commit this to production. Just to show you what that looks like. And also, I'm going to redirect you to my secure endpoint. And what my secure endpoint is a secret thing. It's going to give you this secret message. That's our goal. So we're going to start this up. And I hope it does start up. But poor shame it didn't. Carlos' stuff worked and mine didn't. Well, looks like it compiles. We're initializing. Okay, you're good. So what we'd expect, I'm going to do some incognito because I don't know if I actually already logged into this. The first thing I'm going to do is spell localhost correctly, and then the second thing I'm going to do is go to secure message. Now, what I would expect to see is, I didn't implement a error handle page, so you get that ugly Spring default error handle page that says I am forbidden for the 403 because I didn't authenticate. So let's pull that network tab up here so we can capture all the goodness that's going on in the background. We're going to go to login, which is going to initiate a chain of events /login. First thing that did is it redirected to here. I wanted to capture a few things as part of this request. See if I can, there we go, query string parameters, I don't know how big that is. We have a redirect URL. It has to exactly match the redirect URL I allowed in the Auth0 configuration. If I were just, copy C that, look over in Auth0, minimize that. That should line up. There, spell check, perfect. So as long as that's good, I should be able to log in. If that wasn't good, let me show you what happens when it's not good. Where was I? I'm gonna change some things around. Minimize this. We're gonna delete a K here. Now I'm getting notifications on my calendar. So I think that's saved. Okay, I think it's saved. We're good. Let's try this again. Localhost 8080/login. Didn't work. The URL localhost 8080/callback is not the callback URL. So this is part of the whitelisting trust that OAuth providers implement. There's nothing that says that you have to implement this if you're implementing your own IDP. So that's why it's good to use a cloud provider because it knows that it should implement that. So we're going to go ahead and fix that typo, put that K back, save that, and let's finish this demo. Let's see if this thing works. Remember, my goal is to get that secret message. There it is, secret message. We did it. So let's figure out what happened. There was a lot of stuff that happened there, down there. So eventually we submitted a login. We got a callback, and within that callback, I know it's very small, but you can see there was a query string parameter. The standard naming convention for that is code, C-O-D-E. That is a unique token there that represents my authentication code. This is what I use to now exchange behind the scenes, and you don't see this because the Spring Boot application, all that magic that's implemented by that OAuth 2 dependent, that auth 0 dependency did that for me. All I have now, I should see in the logs, I have the log statements, remember that. That I got all the information back. So I got an access token, I got an ID token. I have no idea why I'm not getting the refresh token back. I didn't have time to figure that out. But I wanted to show you what this JWT is right here. So it's that thing right there. I were to go to my so favorite website, jwt.io, jot.io. I can then come in here, paste that in there, and see what actually came in there. It wasn't a whole lot of information. I wanted to try to get it to show more like profile information, but again, I mean, maybe we can play around with this a little bit. But I wanted to capture that. That's what that looks like. I'm also going to show you that there is all these endpoints that Auth0 will give you. It gives you a lot of help. It's really a good website. They have a really good documentation. So we're going to go all the way down to here. We're in the settings. We're going to go all the way down here. We're going to advanced settings, and I think we're going to go to. I'll show you all these different tabs here. You see here that the slider for OIDC compliant or conformant is implemented. So that's going to give us that ID token back. Some other things we can do, change the algorithm. We're doing RS-256 for that JSON web token. What I wanted to show here is, these are all the endpoints that implemented, and there is one implementation. This is a standard for OIDC, is this OIDC configuration. This is kind of like the sample metadata that I mentioned before. What it's going to look like, it's going to look like this. It gives us all this information about what that server is capable of doing, how to trust that server, all this stuff. So, well, I'm going to show you this thing. This is a JWKS URI, JSON Web Key. I don't know what the S stands for. Maybe it's just plural. I guess.
Set or set.
What's that?
Set or set. S-E-T.
Okay. There's your answer. So if I click on that, that is the signing key used by that ID token. So if I were to put that ID token into here, it would say signature's valid, but I can never get this website to work. I actually don't like this website as much anymore. The other thing here to note is that you scroll down here, it gives you all these different libraries for all different languages. It tells you what it supports, what it doesn't support. So it's kind of useful, but there's some limitations. I've never been able to get this website to work to actually verify your signature. Maybe that's just me. What else? Let's see if we can start to get some of that information out. Is there any questions so far?
So, how long does it take if you do a replication of a job and you have a bunch of REST endpoints? Does that session immediately terminate, or is the user allowed to kind of persist and hit those endpoints? Like once you're signed in, like does OAuth have a way for you to like revoke that validated job?
That's why jobs are only good for like an hour.
Gotcha.
So after an hour, there is. I don't know if there is really a way to do it. I haven't seen a good practice, but there are some like web ACL things that allow you to blacklist certain jobs that have been flagged as exploited or compromised. But yeah, let me see. There was. Go back to that. There's this. IAT and XP, I should think are the same values. They're a little different. Anyone remember what those stand for? forget what IAT is. It's something to do with expiration.
I think it's issued at.
Issue that. That's what it is.
I think this site actually has little tooltips too, like if you ever remember the keys.
There you go.
Expiration time. Issue that time. I don't know about that's pretty small, but I'll read it off to you. We got audience, we got subject, we got issuer. All right, cover all the bases. What's KID? Key ID. I like how they just decided that 3 characters are enough. Type, we don't need the E. TYP. Keep it at 3. Any other questions? So. No? Matt, how do I get the JWT to add more stuff? I want more claims. Do you know how to make the JWT, Auth0 add more claims to the JWT?
You go to your user.
Go to my user. Where? I'm getting lost here.
It's like the third tab.
It's the resolution's like changed on because I have to share on this, so it makes the text really small, and I got bad eyes. I gotta like sit like this.
I know you can do like you were saying with the lambda type things. You can add custom ones in there, but the users have all sorts of attributes on them.
So they have like 10 attributes.
Metadata.
Yeah, metadata.
User metadata. You can add some fields there, and that gets added automatically. I think it's automatic, but if you want to add the app metadata, you have to add one of those custom claims to it.
So Auth0 supports scopes.
Auth0 supports scopes? Yes, I believe so. Well, sorry. I actually don't know. I assume so.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
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 See if we can get that stuff to get added here.
If it doesn't by default, you might have to add a quick claim, but they should have a pre-built one that you can throw in.
Didn't add it. I don't know. It's broken. There's something in like the actual like.
Rules, that's where you can add the custom things. They might have a quick one you can throw in. One by using metadata.
Enrich profile.
Yeah.
Add attribute to a user's add user roles to SQL Server database. Default picture for no values. Change the picture. Change the default picture. That's a good thing. Enrich profile with full contact. Let's see if this works. So what do? I install this?
You would just save it, I think, and then activate it. Like a little flag.
Go back to that. So this is, I guess another cool thing about Auth0 is you have these like JavaScript Lambda functions that you can implement to customize the data that's coming through. So it's saved, and what do I do now? Try it?
That's the little sandbox they got. Yeah,
Ooh.
so yeah, that's it.
All that stuff.
But there should be like a toggle to save the tools in effect.
Oops.
Yeah, there you go, okay.
It's green. Good. Hope this works. We are doing it super live today. Doesn't look any bigger. I don't know. I'm not feeling confident about this one. Nope. Well, while I flounder around, we got anything else?
One thing to mention is that, so I found this one weird thing that was not in the documentation when I was on the front end. They tell you to specify a expiration of the token.
That was a useful article. Custom claims.
You said the documentation was like the Auth0 documentation.
Yeah, those are like when Neat walks you through the React like walkthrough. It's I follow directions and everything, and then I was still getting those refresh token not working, and it was because I had to go to the dashboard and also specify a origin URL or something besides the cloud app origin, which is your localhost 3000 or whatever you're using.
Well, yeah, I'm out of things to show.
Well,
Any more slides? I think that was it. I just had like the, you know, bunch of spam stuff to show you. That's about it. All right.
So any questions from the demo or anything? If you guys are interested, comment on the middle page if you want to see the repos or anything, let us know. And also, depending on the next month's topic, if you have a request for a topic, let us know. If you're 100%, same thing. Keep in touch. We also have a Slack channel for CBD Geeks. You can sign up for that. Just keep in touch. Right. Thanks everyone, and thanks Darren.